Right, well, hello and welcome to our daily roundup of the Africa Cup of Nations action. After a few surprises and an unexpected casualties, 16 teams have booked their places in the knockouts as the group stage came to a close this evening. We'll be talking about all the action with our sports editor Simon Harding and France 24's James Vasina. For more analysis, I'm also joined in the studio by Eurosport journalist Ruben Slagter. Well, hello, good evening to you, Ruben.
Yeah, there's no time to lose. Let's go.
Let's go. And on that, there's nowhere else to begin other than the biggest shock of the tournament so far. Holders Algeria have crashed out of the competition after losing 3-1 to the Ivory Coast. The Desert Foxes needed a win to have stood any chance of qualifying for the last 16 after a draw and a loss in their first two games. But those slim hopes looked dead in the water as the Elephants went 3-0 ahead after 54 minutes before Manchester City's Riyad Mahrez hits a penalty against the post. Jamal Belmadi's side did get a late consolation in the 73rd minute, their only goal of the tournament. For more, let's cross to sports editor Simon Harding, who was following that game in Limbey. Simon, a humiliating end to a disappointing campaign for Algeria, who finished in last place in Group E with just 1 point.
Cataclysmic, humiliating, surprising, stunning. The adjectives go on and on and on, Selina. What is for certain is that this Algeria side underperformed massively in this tournament. As you mentioned, they finished bottom with just 1 point, just one goal scored in 3 matches for a team that was ahead of the tournament, the out-and-out favourite to retain the title here in Cameroon. It was a strange formation put out by Jamal Belmadi, who opted for a 4-2-4 all-out attack. Now, as you mentioned, Algeria did have to win the game, but by doing so and by opting for this formation, then Belmadi surrendered the midfield to the Ivory Coast, and that is simply where Algeria lost the ball. In the first half, the ball never reached the strikers, the attackers in the correct position, and as soon as the central midfielders opted to press, then all Ivory Coast had to do was knock the ball back and then knock it forwards, and Algeria were undone. That's how Kessier's goal came about, Sangare's header at the back post, inexplicable lack of marking by the Algerian centre-backs. There were changes at half-time, but it was just more of the same after the break. Lack of creativity, so slow throughout the game. Pepe with a trademark finish, curling the ball beautifully into the bottom corner to make it 3. Mahrez to embody really the Algerian failure, missing a penalty, and then of course that consolation goal which did nothing really to appease Algeria and the Algerian fans who were shell-shocked here at the Japoma Stadium in Douala. And we had an opportunity to speak to Aissa Mandi after the match, who said that now wasn't the time to examine things, but instead to take time and take stock of what had happened.
We're not going to analyse things now. We'll go over everything calmly afterwards. It's not worth doing right now. Sometimes you can say something stupid or be in the wrong. Later, we will see what went wrong and correct it. We'll be back, God willing. There's no problem. We'll work really hard.
So history does repeat itself for Algeria, Selina, because in 1990 they won the Africa Cup of Nations, and then 2 years later in Senegal they exited at the group stages, once again with the Ivory Coast in their group, and once again losing by a 3-goal margin to the Ivory Coast.
Indeed, Simon. I'll be discussing some Ruben later on, but definitely a curse as of late to win the Africa Cup of Nations and then get knocked out at the first hurdle. Simon, let's quickly talk about the Ivory Coast, who provided a masterclass for the Desert Foxes this evening and obviously qualify for the last 16 in the top spot.
Yes, the Super Eagles had been rightly praised for putting in the best performance of the tournament so far against Egypt in Group D. But I must say that this Ivory Coast team was by far the silkiest, the smoothest performance of the tournament, and really the most impressive. The midfield, as I mentioned earlier on, was simply majestic, with Jean-Michel Seri, Franck Kessié and Sangare bossing things for them. Serge Aurier was simply stunning as the captain, really impressive. always going forwards, always looking to play the ball in dangerous areas. And Nicolas Pepe seems to have hit some run of form, now scoring in back-to-back games for the Ivory Coast. Sebastian Haller was a constant thorn in the back of Algeria. So good performances, it must be said, all around the pitch for the Ivory Coast. We spoke to Patrice Baumel, the head coach, after the game, who said that he was glad his team were finally fulfilling their potential after shooting 18 times that goal against Sierra Leone and just scoring twice, which led to that draw, and a little bit of criticism towards the Elephants at the start of the week. This time around, very different. They took their chances. They could have had more. Sebastian Haller had a goal ruled out for offside late on as well. But this is a marker for the Ivory Coast towards all the other opponents in the tournament, that they do mean business. And of course, Selina, it's going to be a tough game, a game between two giants on the continent in the last 16, as Ivory Coast will play against Egypt here at the Japoma Stadium. And of course, we'll be there for that one as well.
Indeed, a big showpiece game to be looking forward to there. Thank you, Simon Harding, there for us in Limbe. Algeria's manager, Jamal Belmadi, has said that the defeat was a bitter thing to taste and that the team will need to improve if they are to qualify for the World Cup in Qatar at the end of the year.
I'm not sure I would say we're facing a crisis. We've failed, that's for sure. The team's disappointed, despondent, perhaps confused. It's something we're not used to. Losing is something we've never experienced. We've never lost. In 4 days, we lost. We did something in 4 days that we haven't done in 3 years. It's obviously a shock for us.
So Ruben, Belmadi said that there's no crisis in the Algerian camp, but it's needless to say that there will be some soul-searching going on, especially after coming into this tournament on the back of such good form, 35 unbeaten games, and having won the Arab Cup in Qatar in December.
Yes, of course, and Simon said it right. Also changing their whole strategy today, that was strange. I mean, the first 2 games, you can still say that they were a little bit unlucky, missing a lot of opportunities against weaker opponents, so it was already a shame that they didn't win those 2 games. But today they were just outclassed by their opponents. I mean, Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, they were fantastic. But Algeria, they were also really, really bad today. So, yeah, of course, there's something to be done. I hope for them they've learned their lessons because, yeah, soon there will be those playoffs for the World Cup, really important for them. And it's almost a shame that the Ivory Coast, they didn't qualify for those playoffs because, yeah, we won't see them in Qatar. And the way they play today, you would like to see such a team at the World Cup as well.
Indeed. And is there something of a reigning champions curse, Ruben? Because Algeria are the 3rd holders to exit this competition in the last 5 tournaments.
Yeah, we've seen it really often. They already say that it's difficult to be at the top, to get there, but to stay there, it's even harder. We see it also at the World Cup with so many world champions getting out in the first round. Just think about Germany, the last World Cup in Russia, already getting out and crashing out in the first round. We've seen it right here as well. But I have to say that this tournament with Algeria, they were so good in shape in the Arab Cup. Everybody was expecting so much from them. So for me, it was even a bigger shock than all those others, to be honest. So yeah. We'll see if the winner in February will have to be worried for the next tournament as well.
Indeed, and potentially not the last surprise in this tournament. There's been a fair few so far. Let's now move on to the other group results in Group E. Equatorial Guinea have reached the last 16 after beating Sierra Leone 1-0. Midfielder Pablo Ganet scored in the 38th minute. Sierra Leone needed a point to progress to the knockouts and were dealt a lifeline when they were awarded a penalty, though Kay Kamara's spot kick was saved by the goalkeeper. Equatorial Guinea finished second in Group E behind the Ivory Coast. For more, let's cross to James Vasina in Limbe, who was watching that game earlier. James, it's been quite the campaign so far for Equatorial Guinea.
Selina, we saw Equatorial Guinea, as you mentioned just before, beat Algeria in a 1-0 win. Well, they were fresh off that win, and you could see it again, once again today. They came in, dominated the game completely. This is pretty much a one-way situation here. An absolutely brilliant side, and there was that goal from Gannett, which really sealed things off. A beautiful goal, and after they saved that penalty, well, you really got an idea to where things were actually going to be going. They almost doubled just a minute later after that. But unfortunately never managed to find that second goal for them. But for Sierra Leone, I think this is going to be really difficult because it's their first defeat in the tournament. They had a brilliant campaign. I mean, they had managed to hold Algeria in that first game to an opening draw, which is a huge feat in itself, and then hold the Ivory Coast to a 2-2 draw as well. So today to lose against Equatorial Guinea, who let's say is of course a smaller team than the opponents that they'd faced before, will be hard to digest, and their players told us, of course, that they were disappointed. But once again, they leave the third time in the group stages, never managing yet to get to the knockout round. So for the third time leaving at this point, perhaps it'll be fourth time lucky for them.
Indeed. And James, let's move on to Group F now, where there was some last-minute drama in the last game you were watching for us this evening in Limbe between the Gambia and Tunisia.
Yeah, Selina, that was absolutely crazy. I mean, we were watching the game and we were kind of like, oh, it's a little bit... Not much was happening, not much was going on until that last-minute goal, Abli Jallo absolutely hammering it in. The stadium went absolutely wild. It was magnificent. And the Gambia, I mean, look... They're one of the newcomers. We didn't think that they were going to win their opening game. They did. They managed to get this far and now managed to beat Tunisia. So, I mean, a fantastic performance on their side. And, of course, they're going to have something big to tell back home. They had a really good defence today. They saved that penalty. And I can tell you, I've seen a lot of penalties over the last few weeks. But every time a penalty does get saved, well, the crowds go absolutely wild. And so did we, of course. I mean, they were facing Tunisia, who were in a difficult situation. They had many players who were away. Khazri in particular, pretty much the man who the whole team is built around, was absent because of this as well. And Caballé knew that it was going to be difficult for his team. It happened today, and they just weren't up for it. But in the nice story for the Gambia here is that Comoros have also qualified as one of the third best teams on their side, which means that the two newcomers to the tournament are making it through to the round of 16. What a story for them to tell! And as you've seen, the favourites can fall. Anything can happen here.
Indeed, anything can happen. I think that is definitely the conclusion of this tournament so far. We're going to move on to the last 16, but let's just quickly mention that also Mali eased past Mauritania 2-0 in the other game in Group F. But let's take a look at all the teams that have made the last 16 and most importantly, who will be playing who in a place for the quarterfinals. Burkina Faso will play Gabon in the first match on Sunday, while hot favourites Nigeria, who are the only team to have won all three of their group games, will be facing Tunisia. Guinea will play the Gambia on Monday. Host Cameroon will face tournament debutants Comoros, who have pulled off an amazing feat to reach this stage. On Tuesday, Sadio Mane's Senegal will take on the Cape Verde, and Group C winners Morocco will face Malawi. And there's a mouth-watering match to be looking forward to with the Ivory Coast up against Mohamed Salah's Egypt. And finally, Group F winners Mali will be facing Equatorial Guinea. Ruben, we're going to be going into these fixtures in more detail over the next few days. We've obviously got some rest days coming up. But quickly, who is your standouts team so far?
Well, you already said it. Nigeria, they won their 3 matches and they have been the most impressive so far. Also, Simon said it before. The standout performance for me was still Ivory Coast today against Algeria. That was fantastic. So if they can keep that momentum. The other 2 teams that really impressed me are home team Cameroon, scoring a lot of goals. Abubakar in great shape, so that's interesting. Against the Comoros, as much as we would like the fairy tale to go on, I think they're the clear favourites. And then there's Mali, who are so stable at the back. They don't concede. I think that they could be, again, the dark horses to go really, really far in this tournament. So 4 favourites for me.
Definitely a few contenders. Let's quickly bring in James for his thoughts. James, after watching the group stages on the ground, who have you got tipped for glory?
Well, look, we've definitely got quite a few outsiders who are here, and let's see how far they can be going. But, I mean, I've talked about the Gambia, and I'm fresh out of that game, and I can tell you, of course, I'm quite excited for what's to come. One of the games that you mentioned there that we will be following, that will be on Monday in Bafoussam, will be Guinea versus the Gambia. The Gambia taking on Guinea, who will be without Naby Keita, who's pretty much shone mostly for his team. He's really saved them so far, but they'll be without him. So let's see what they can do. Let's see whether they can give them a test. I think it's going to be a good stepping stone for them if they do manage to get any further. It'll be a slight, they'll be going up a level there, but it's going to be very interesting, and all these games, of course, we'll be following them all over here.
Lots to look forward to. Thank you to you there, James Vasina, reporting for us there. And a big thank you also to Ruben for joining us this evening. That brings us to the end of tonight's Africa Cup of Nations show. Thank you for watching. There may be a few rest days coming up for the teams who've qualified for the last 16, but we'll be back again on Friday evening at around 11:40 p.m. local time in Yaoundé and Paris. Until then, stay tuned for more news here on France 24.